And with that, support for the Domestic Draft podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who's the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with their exclusive offer. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with our code Domestic Draft. That's one word, Domestic Draft, at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, that's about 12 million balls. Now, I know we've all had to go down there and take care of business and clear some things up. And maybe it's not been the best experience, and maybe it's been a little messy sometimes, but not with this. Manscaped is giving you the Performance Package. All right, the Performance Package 4.0 has arrived, and man, is it a game changer. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance Boxer briefs, and travel bag all in one. First off, this lawnmower, man. This trimmer is the trimmer of the future. And dare I say it's the greatest ball trimmer ever. I mean, you could take this thing wherever. It's got a little light up there, and you could just go to town with this thing. It's the 4th generation trimmer, features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. This is thanks to their advanced skin safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof and also has 4,000 LEDs light that I said you can use for a precise shave. Because the trimmer is waterproof, you can go ahead and say goodbye to the mess in the bathroom floor and take it into the shower. You thought that was good, but but you want to take your grooming even to the next level? Well, this is the 4.0 package like I've been talking about, and it also includes your Weed Whacker for nose and hair trimmer. I know we keep getting older and those nose hairs keep growing longer, so use this and take care of those nose hairs, right? Their Crop Preserver, ball deodorant, and Crop Reviver ball toner will change the way you approach the hygiene routine. Hygiene is important, man. Take care of yourself. Stay in the routine. Take care of your hygiene. It's important. They even threw in 2 free of their gift performances package in the 4.0. They give like the toe bag that you could take when you're going out of town. They give you the boxers as well that are super soft. They give you the t-shirt as well. Like, it's just a great package, this Manscaped 4.0 package. Go ahead and get it today. Use the code Domestic Draft. That's one word, Domestic Draft, to get you 20% off and free shipping. Again, 20% off and free shipping with the code Domestic Draft at manscaped.com. That is 20% off free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code Domestic Draft. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
All right. This
Man.
is the Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Slowick. Today on the show, we're going to be discussing the Chicago Sky, Chicago Red Stars. We don't talk about often enough on this podcast, and some of the Chicago Bulls. But Dan, why don't you kick it off first with what you're drinking?
I have a beer from Refuge Beer Company, Refuge, excuse me. It's called Baja Crush, and it's up here in San Diego in Temecula. If you are in San Diego, Temecula is often referred to as kind of a little wine country area for North County. But I never heard of it. I saw the logo Baja Crush. Baja, I love Baja, California. I like going down there. So I got it. And it's good. It's 6.2%. It's 3.7 on Untapped. Their description, it's very juicy, right? They kind of mask the hops behind their juicy forwardness of mango. So what I really want to talk about, though, is some of the cool things they do at their brewery. It was a group of friends that started home brewing. And then in 2012, they opened the doors to their brewery. And the really, really cool thing is that they partnered up with one of their friends who was a mechanical engineer, and they created brew technology as well, SS Brewtech, which is one of the leaders in stainless steel tanks. So if you go to like a brewery and you see those big stainless steel tanks, Refuge Brewing and SS Brewtech are kind of partners in this, and they are distributing worldwide with these state-of-the-art stainless steel tanks. So I want to go to their tap room because they get to have a playground basically with all their new designs and ideas for brewing. And Refuge is their playground basically. So they get to use all of the new technology from SS Brewtech in their tap room. So I got to get up to Temecula and check this out. It just seems like a really smart idea, and I'm surprised it hasn't been done before, but I got to check them out. What about you? What are you drinking? Something familiar?
Yeah, I do. I actually have Phase 3 Brewing. We talked about them on the show before, but the beer I have is called Bushel of Apples. It's a peanut caramel apple ale that is brewed in collaboration with Tapple. So they just released it this month. Actually, you can find it in most Jewels and Binnies in the Chicagoland area. But the interesting thing about this beer is that this year they partnered with Deerfield-based Gigi's Playhouse. So they partnered with a different, local charity each year, and a portion of the proceeds from every 4-pack and keg benefits Gigi's Playhouse. It's Down Syndrome Achievement Centers. And their goal is raising over 15,000 between the distribution sales and their fall community event, which was at the beginning of the month, October 1st. They have that out in Lake Zurich where the brewery is located. It's 6%. It gets a 3.83 on Untapped. So that's what I've got
Nice.
today. Phase 3, an old familiar face.
I like the cause as well. That's awesome. Drinking beer reminds me of Iowa. We both went to school there and played Division III. Our next guest also went to Iowa as well, or a school in Iowa. They went to Iowa, the actual University of Iowa. Our next guest is Annie Costabile. Annie covers the Chicago Sky, Red Stars, and the Bulls for the Sun-Times, and also hosts her podcast, Equal Play Podcast. Annie, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm also drinking beer. I know nothing about it other than it's brewed in the Midwest. So
Yeah, you got the gumball
and
head.
also like my humble beginnings as a waitress / bartender, this was a very popular beer.
Yeah, that's like the starter beer for craft beer drinkers is gumball.
Well, Three Floyds. Yeah, love to see it.
I'm a beginner.
So we always like talking about, how our guests got to where they are in their career, and we're interested. Was sports always in your background? Was this something that you've always had a part of your life, and that's what led to being in sports journalism?
Yeah, I played sports my whole life. I started as a swimmer. That was the first sport I ever played. Really loved it. And then got away from it as I got older, focused more on like team sports, which swimming is a team sport, but, team sports like basketball, softball, and then slowly whittled down my sport list to just playing basketball. So I played basketball, up until high school. And then for fun, once I got to college, intramurals at Iowa, Lisa Bluter wasn't recruiting me. So I wanted to go to a big school, so I knew I wasn't gonna play in college. But yeah, sports was a huge part of my childhood and is obviously a huge part of my life now.
How'd you land on broadcast journalism? Was that something that you've always had a passion for, or is that something that you found was, your niche as you got into college?
I'm laughing because this story is like, whenever I get asked this, it just pops into my head every single time because this is truly the story of how it happened. I was unhealthily obsessed with LeBron James growing up. Like,
oh no,
I just truly and I still think he's an incredible athlete, human, like all of these things. But now I understand what's healthy versus unhealthy. So anyways, being dramatic. When I was in high school, he was my favorite athlete. I used to come home from practice and like Google his highlight tapes from high school. Like, when you were younger and you'd go down a YouTube rabbit hole and you just like end up spending hours and you get all these different clips from whoever was uploading them. It was like a special time because it was just these like underground videographers that were recording high school sports that way. And obviously LeBron had like a name for himself. So he had a ton of videos. So yeah, I just got really interested in knowing more about him and like his upbringing. And, he was raised by a single mom. I was raised by a single mom, very different like circumstances, but still, I just was really interested in this like human side of this great athlete. And so, yeah, I would just spend countless hours watching YouTube videos, looking at or reading about him, all these different things. And my mom one night was just like, you could do that. And I'm like, what? I can't be LeBron James. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, you can be the one who tells his story or helps tell his story. And it just right away was like, how could I not have? It's almost like it was always meant for me. And how could I not have thought about it before then? And the second she said that, there was never going to be anything else I was going to do with my life. Like, it was done from there. That was all I wanted to do. All I wanted to be like, my passwords on my computer were, Miss ESPN. Like I manifested everything that I'm doing right now. It's truly like, I have
That's
to
awesome.
pinch myself.
Yeah, that's incredible. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, you started off as an intern at ESPN Radio, right? So you kind of went Miss ESPN right off the bat. That was while you were in college.
Still your password?
So that was my password, like to get into all of my like Iowa accounts, and that was before I even really like knew much about manifestation and just like positive thinking and all these different things. But when I was in college, I was like, I need to talk like, not this is a dream, like this is who I am and this is what I'm gonna do. And I remember when I was in school, I used to introduce myself to professionals and say, I'm a journalist. Like, even though I was still in college, I just started to talk like, no, this is who I am, because I just refused the idea that I would be anything else. So yeah, ESPN was my first internship, and I was not like a 4-year intern. That was my first internship, and I was going into, I think that was the summer of my sophomore year, and I was late to the game. Like I didn't really realize even I should have been looking at internships, because at Iowa we were part of the DITV program. So we were doing all this professional work throughout our school year. I thought summer, like I could take it off. And I don't know, I think maybe like someone I thought of as my competition maybe said like, oh, I'm doing this internship. And so, I just got home and was like, oh my God, I need to find an internship. Luckily, ESPN hadn't hired their full list of summer interns. I got an interview, and something my grandma always told me growing up was like, find something that you could relate with someone on so that they remember you. And so I was not the most qualified person, but I'm like, okay, what's going to be the thing that I connect with this person interviewing me on? Such a funny story, but this woman's interviewing me, and I don't even know how it came up, but one of my first jobs ever as a human, I was a host at a restaurant like down the street from where I grew up. And she just mentions the restaurant, and I'm like, shut up, I used to work there. And I have no idea if that even mattered, but I know she didn't forget me. And then I got the job, and ended up spending an incredible summer with Waddle and Sylvie. I helped get Kareem on the show, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Brian Urlacher came on the show after I like stalked him in our studio office. Like, he was in the building doing an interview with someone else, and I went down to the lobby and like waited him out. And when he came out the door, I was like, hey, I work for ESPN. Do you want to come up and do an interview? And he was like, absolutely. So anyways, that was
That's really cool.
Persistence is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's how that went. Yeah. You got to wait in the lobby for people before they head out to their car.
That was like a unique circumstance. Like I remember our producer, Randy Merkin, who's still like an incredible person. He's so supportive of my career. I have so many funny stories about, just the things I would say as a young journalist, and he would like talk me off the ledge. But that instance, he told me at the beginning of the day, he was like, hey, Brian Urlacher is supposed to be coming in to do an interview with ABC. We might have you go like try and get him if we can't get a hold of, his team or whatever. And I'm like, cool. Yeah, no problem. And that's another thing like my mom taught me growing up. She was like, don't be afraid to like basically like go where you're not supposed to go, or do things that you're not supposed to do. Like,
ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Exactly. Ask for forgiveness, not permission. And so, I luckily, had that kind of courage ingrained in me, because I feel like some people might be intimidated by that situation. Totally. And I was like, no, the second he walks out the door, like before his assistant can walk up to him, before anybody could get in his path, like I need to go up to him and shake his hand and say I work for ESPN. not that I'm an intern,
Mhm.
and just convince him to come up, and he did. So.
And now you're no longer popping out in lobbies asking people for interviews. I looked on some of your social media. I saw you interviewing Sue Bird, like one of the greatest basketball players ever for the WNBA. Like, so what's that like now, going from that kind of ascension of whatever it takes, popping out, asking people to come on shows, to now it's your job to go interview the best of the best?
Yeah, I think it's just that same confidence you have to have of like, I belong in these rooms. I belong standing next to these people. I belong, sharing their stories. And I don't say that in a cocky way. Like, I don't say that to say, oh, I'm somehow on the same level as Sue Bird. It's just, you have to have that mentality, or when an agent tells you no, or when a team says, hey, they're not available, you're going to be like, okay. And it's like, no, this is what I need. I need your help to get it done.
Mhm.
You can't take no for an answer. And I mean, sometimes you have to, like,
Sure.
you can't like storm Sue. Like, I wasn't going to pop out of the bushes to interview Sue Bird if like, there was
Yeah.
a no there. That's not how I was going to do it. But yeah, you have to just, I think, have that same confidence of like, I need to get this done. This is my job to get it done, and no one's going to stop me.
Yeah. I think the term for that is imposter syndrome. And I think there's a lot of people our age that get that, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I know I've felt that
Every day.
personally before. I know a lot of people just are, I think, in our, the stage of life where you're kind of, you've been around working for maybe 10 plus years, something like that. You're still, don't feel like maybe I should be as high as I am or gotten as far as I did. So no, that's great that to be able to push past that feeling is huge. And I can see it in your work. Another thing we wanted to bring up was the Equal Play podcast, and wanted
Yeah.
to get, the story on that and how that got started.
So during the pandemic, or actually before the pandemic, I wanted to start a podcast that was solely focused on women and women's sports. Because my career, when I started at the Sun Times, I realized that there were these gaping holes. And I also realized very quickly, like, there's a huge audience for women's sports. Like, people want to know these stories. They want to know how Rebecca Gardner played 10 years overseas before she signs her first WNBA contract. They want to know that, like, Candace Parker spent X amount of days, weeks, months working on a shoe with her daughter and then got to wear it opening night. Like, the same stories, the very deep personal stories about LeBron James, like, there's just not enough of those in women's sports. And that's not even just about the athletes. That's, executives, coaches, ADs. All of these stories someone's going to hear them and be inspired by it. And by not sharing them, we're preventing entire groups of individuals from finding inspiration. We're essentially eliminating, like, my story, how I found inspiration from LeBron James. We're taking that away from people. So yeah, I just honestly was interviewing so many women every single day, and I would always end up leaving the conversation thinking, God, I wish I could put the entire conversation into the story, but you're obviously only pulling this quote and that quote. And so yeah, before the pandemic started, I tried out, a podcast idea with a colleague of mine. We did that for a couple months, and it just was really difficult to get our schedules to always line up. Like, it wasn't working as kind of like a dual thing. And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, fuck it. I'm like, want to do this.
Right.
I'm just going to do it. So I just did it, and I hit up a bunch of my friends for like name ideas. My friend Waverly McCarthy, she's married now, so McCarthy's not her last name anymore, but from Mississippi, she helped me come up with the Equal Play name. Went back and forth with the Sun Times team to come up with the perfect logo. So it just, it was something that was born in a dark time, but an idea that had been like percolating for a really long time.
That's awesome. I love the drive. It just seems like you're very ambitious, and it's like you get ideas and let's go make it happen kind of thing. And people can find that anywhere podcasts are available, right? Equal Play Podcast.
Yep. You can find it anywhere that podcasts are available. And I will say too, it's like a very young podcast. I've had it, since 2020, so 2 years, but the way that my schedule is, and since I am like a solo, I'm the editor, I'm the producer, I'm the
one-stop
host.
shop.
It's along with all my responsibilities, as a writer. It's not a daily podcast. It's not a weekly podcast. It's, I would say, like a monthly podcast. And then the off season, like right now, is when I'm going to be able to like put out consecutive episodes, versus when the season starts, I have to put that as kind of my backseat because of just the daily responsibilities of being a beat reporter.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You're a busy person. And one of the teams you cover is the Chicago Sky. They really took over the city in 2021 with their first WNBA championship. Can you maybe just like encapsulate that year, like that ride, the way the city supported them, like how that playoff like success like was for you to be around that team?
I'll just say this, like, this is how I'll sum it up. So I can't watch sports documentaries anymore without thinking about the eventual documentary that's going to be done on that team, because it was so storybook from the just, okay, like, let's go back to the very beginning, like, of this organization. They're not one of the original organizations. They are a startup org. They struggle for years. They get this point guard in 2011 who's from Washington and is like gritty but humble and like quiet, and she quickly becomes like the identity of the team, like Chicago's favorite. Then a year later, a hometown shooter comes in, Allie Quigley. She makes a name for herself in the WNBA after years of struggling, essentially struggling to find her niche, struggling to find a team where she could blossom the way that she blossomed in Chicago. Those two end up married. Years later, Candace Parker signs with the team, the hometown legend. Like, Candace Parker is a legend in sports. She is one of the greatest athletes, basketball aside, period. Greatest athletes ever. And she's from right here, Naperville, comes home, signs with Chicago, and wins it in her first year back in Chicago. Like, she delivers on what she set out to do. And then you mix in the storylines with like Kalia Copper and the trade that brought her here. Like, Chicago traded Elena Deladon for Kalia Copper and Stephanie Dolson. Those two get in Chicago and blow up. Like, it just was just a beautiful, beautiful story. Beautiful basketball was played. There were highs, there were lows. Like, it was everything. It was everything. Also, Diamond DeShields, like, she was drafted and became just, when you think about Chicago athletes or athletes who aren't from Chicago but come in and take Chicago on as their identity, like, they're not from here, but they feel like they're from here because of who they are, the way they dress, the way they carry themselves. Like, Diamond was that. And then she helps bring them a championship before departing in free agency. Like, it just all was so, it was a movie. You felt like while you were in it, you were trying to just remember everything, because one day it's going to be a movie. And I guess that's just my opinion, but
I'm sure it will be.
I mean, a documentary at the very least. I think Candace
and you should
Parker's...
pitch it. That pitch you just did, like,
go
into an exec office and just pitch that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
there from that.
I think there'll be Candace has definitely got a documentary, coming down the line. Like, I would bet that she has a documentary coming, and that'll be part of it. But I think that the Sky, that team will have a story like that one day.
And we did have a question. What's it like covering a living legend? Yeah, obviously Candace Parker is a legend. Everyone knows it. What is it like to be around that type of person? Just that's so big and famous and just all time.
So it's interesting because Candace is one of the most like approachable people you could ever meet. She's not, yeah, she's just a very approachable human. And I think she'd be that way regardless of the, you know, the hype around the league that she's playing in. But sometimes I think about the way that Candace Parker moves, or the way that Sue Bird moves, or the way that some of these, again, these greatest of all time athletes move, and the way that they're just so within reach in the WNBA, because it hasn't blown up to the level of the NBA yet. And I think one day I'm gonna look back on this time of covering the WNBA and be like, damn, I remember when, you know, it just, everyone was so within reach of you. And again, I think Candace would be that way regardless. She's just a very kind person from what I've learned about her and her upbringing, you know, engaging with her family, her mom and her dad, her brothers, like that's just a very Midwestern, approachable family. So working with her has been nothing but incredible. She's definitely helped me do my job well, and her team has helped me do my job well. So it's been pretty incredible working with her. And it's also been a bit surreal just growing up, like, you know, a town away from, or a couple towns away from Naperville.
Mhm.
I'm from Addison, Illinois. And so, yeah, growing up, like, you knew who Candace Parker was, you knew, the legend she was. And so, yeah, covering that team, it's just, it was pretty surreal. Like it's hard to even find the right words, but surreal, I think, is one of them.
And they made another run this recent year, didn't end up winning it, but so now it kind of leaves them with, yeah, back-to-back runs, really. What do they do now? Where do they go from here? What's on the offseason to-do list? I know Courtney Vandersloot is the big name that I think a lot of people have been talking about. And I got to say, in one of the recent articles that you wrote, you put your prediction was that she signs with the Storm rather than our Chicago Sky. So I'm just, you know, I wanted to press you on that a little bit. Like, why do you think that's happening? Is Allie Quigley done as well, right? You said that's they're married. So I would imagine, is that a package deal if they both
And
go
also,
somewhere?
is Candace coming back, or is she contemplating retirement? That's a lot. There's a lot of questions there.
A lot of questions.
With all the questions, and this is like what I'll be working on all off season. But yeah, this year was a disappointment for sure. And not, I wasn't personally disappointed, but when you look at the way that this team was constructed, there's nothing else to say about it other than y'all fell short completely, dropped the ball. Like, this is not how that team should have ended the season. And they just ran out of gas at the end, which is something that's so interesting to think about, because the year they won it, they obviously battled injuries in the beginning. They lost 7 straight. Like, they weren't playing as a top team the entire year. They figured it out in the playoffs, right? So you can maybe argue like, oh, you had all this gas left in the tank at the end because you spent the season figuring it out. Well, this year they spent the season playing at this high level, and it caught up to them in the semifinals. Like, they just looked depleted. I mean, that game 5, like, to lose game 5 the way that they did on their home court after winning a championship, like, you have a banner hanging above you and you drop game 5 like that, up 11 with 7 minutes to go. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, I'm going to be ranting about it all year. Like, once we get back into media veils, like, oh my God, it just, wow. So, you know, this end of the season, it just, that letdown was palpable. Like, exit interviews were just, God, I don't even know. It was like the air was sucked out of the room. Everyone, like, players, you know, came in, and you just, you could feel their letdown, like
Right.
how let down they were by that. And so what follows now is a huge free agency, because James Weed got Courtney, Allie back and sold all these free agents on the hope of like going back to back. And, you know, Courtney never said to me, oh, I was going to sign here and then I wanted to go for repeat titles. But she did say she would, you know, it's open news. We knew she was entertaining other ideas. And so, you know, going for that back-to-back title played a huge role in her coming back to Chicago. Allie Quigley took $60,000 less than she made the year prior to re-sign with Chicago, which ultimately, you know, does also reflect the space she's in her career. And we saw her numbers dip this year. But again, now the pitch is what, you know? And I asked James that, I'm like, you sold them on back-to-back titles. What are you going to sell them on now? And he was like, we want to go 2 out of 3. And sure, that's, everyone wants to win a championship every year, but Courtney's really motivated by challenges. She said that to me on the record, you know, almost every interview. She talks about wanting to be challenged. And, you know, complacency is also something that she talks a lot about, you know, avoiding. And so she said those were 2 things that influenced her decision to entertain Minnesota and Seattle. And so if she was entertaining Minnesota and Seattle last year, well, now coming off a disappointing season, you've done all that you set out to do in Chicago. You saw one of your greatest teammates and friends come back to their hometown and win a championship here. That Seattle move with Sue retiring, it's almost like the red carpet is laid out for her to return. But there's a lot of factors there. You know, does she want to be the point guard that comes in after Sue? You know, these are all questions that's a question I have not yet asked her. But considering the way she you know, entertained that idea last year, I just think people need to prepare themselves that Courtney could be leaving in the winter. And then, yeah, when you think about Allie, you know, she's at a place in her career where, you know, she's considering retirement, and she's not going to be someone that goes out with a bunch of fanfare. You know, she's a more subtle, quiet person. I asked Courtney that. I was like, if Allie retires, is she going to do like the farewell tour? Is this going to be like a quiet, like Instagram post that none of us know about? Like, she doesn't tell anybody. It's just, you wake up and you see it. And she was like, no, she's like a quiet person, you know? So that's why my prediction is that, you know, I think Allie too has done everything that she could have dreamed of doing.
I mean, it's the fans are hoping for another championship. I think they really the city finally got behind them, even though they've been around for such a long time. I think this iteration of the team has garnered a lot of Chicago support. But if we could transition to another team that I think has always had the city's heart, Chicago Bulls. You started covering them this year. And there's a lot going on. It's only been 4 games so far, but there's a lot of headlines going on. I think the biggest one fans are talking about is Zach Levine. What is this knee management? Do you have any insight into what it is? Was he resting it those first 2 games because of something that happened, or is this how the season's going to play out?
So just have to say too, my role with the Bulls is definitely like backup quarterback. Joe Colley is an incredible beat writer, and I'm just like honored I could even grace his beat. Like it's really, I'm excited to see how it helps me grow as a beat reporter covering the WNBA. So this is absolutely Joe Colley's beat, and I am just his backup QB. But as far as the Zach Levine situation goes, so interesting, like so just interesting, like because all year, or not all year, but off season, you know, he gets the surgery done in May, signs his max deal in July. All the talk is like, I'm good, I'm rehabbing, I'm gonna be good. And all preseason, that's all it was like, I'm 100%, I'm ready to go, blah 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 blah. And then game one, he's like, like, oh, we had a hard practice and now I need to like sit out game one and game two. And so I think that it's going to be something that could change very quickly into, oh, he actually is fine. It was just, precautionary in those first two games, or it could be something that lingers throughout the entire season. And I think that this beginning of the season is really when they're testing that. They're obviously testing it, but what continues to get reiterated is that, he's got to be ready to go 100% at the end of the year. So they're thinking the long game here, which, is smart, but it's just interesting how the messaging changed just overnight. Like there was no mention of a knee issue until Wednesday, game one against Miami. Like that was the first mention of any issue. And then now, it becomes, okay, we're going to have to manage him on back-to-backs. And what Billy Donovan has said is like, that's really dependent on exactly how he's feeling. So that could change day to day. Like he could end up playing certain back-to-backs because he feels good. And the doctors are like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're good to go on this one. But Billy Donovan also said there are days when Zach could say, I'm feeling good. And then the powers that be are like, no, I think it's best if you sit this one out. So there just is like no clarity.
Yeah.
Which they're not, they don't need to, I guess, be clear, but it just, there's a ton left open for interpretation. Managing is just such a vague term too. It's like, what does that mean?
Right.
So.
Yeah. The other person that I want to talk about every time we talk about the Bulls, Dan and I have we go back and forth on Patrick Williams. I'm not a believer. But it seems, maybe he's been relegated to a bench role. Is this the right move? Is he actually on the bench now? And
or should he get relegated? Should he get relegated?
Well,
so I just have to say my context just got really dry. I feel like it looked like I rolled my eyes. I wasn't. I was just like, sometimes I like.
Oh, it's all good.
Eyes. Yeah,
we get it. Hey, we get it.
It happens all the time to me.
I just didn't want someone to look back and be like, "Oh, they're talking about Patrick Williams."
Patrick Williams again. Wow,
Patrick Williams.
What else is new?
I mean, this is just the thing. He's not playing like they need him to play. And Javonte Green's doing an incredible job. Derek Jones Jr. also looked really good in the minutes that he's played that have, been minutes that were Patrick Williams. And so, I mean, Billy's been very vocal in his support for Patrick Williams and his development, but does that mean he's going to continue supporting him by keeping him in the starting lineup? I don't think so. I think that we're going to see a change here, if not, in the next game, in the coming games, because it's just hard to ignore how well Javonte Green is playing and what he does for that starting lineup and just energy wise, like how he invigorates the team with his play, because he's not even someone that is going to necessarily go out and drop 30, but he makes these game-changing plays, these defensive plays. Like he's someone who impacts the game with his energy and his movement and his commitment to like going all out. He is doing what they need Patrick Williams to do. Like all this talk 100%. About needing to see Patrick Williams be more aggressive, like Javonte Green is who they need Patrick Williams to be. So I just think in that respect, like give Javonte the spot. You're everything you're talking about needing. He's
providing. Yeah. You just can't, you can't hand out the minutes to Patrick the way he's playing. You just can't. I mean, you did last year or previous years because he was top 5 pick, but I mean, he's being outplayed by Javonte. Even Derek Jones Jr. recently, the last game, outplaying him as well.
Yeah. And, I think the mental side of the game is huge. And I don't want to pretend like I have any idea what it takes to perform at, peak ability. Patrick Williams is a really young kid. Like he's young. He has years to develop for sure. I guess I shouldn't say years, because obviously in the NBA you have to prove yourself or you get lost and will eventually be phased out of the league. But you know, I don't think that him losing a starting role means that he will not develop into what people hope and expect him to be, but he's also just not there right now. So
yeah. Last question before we move on. Biggest difference between covering the NBA versus the WNBA? Everything.
So many things. Like so many things. So I love covering the WNBA. I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm staying for the rest of my career covering the WNBA. Like I have so many like visions about the future. Like I am in this to fucking win this.
Love it.
But there's a lot that becomes very apparent how young the league is when you transition to another beat. And in this case, the NBA. And so I think one of the biggest things is the understanding of what traditional media's role is, because the WNBA has an incredible support, an incredible base of writers, media members who cover the league and do it from more of a personal like standpoint. You know, there's and I don't say this as a negative thing, like there's bias inserted it. You have people covering teams that they also cheer for and they're loyal. They know everything about the team, but there's just there's a difference between that type of media member and then a traditional beat reporter or a traditional broadcaster, and neither is better than the other. But because those incredible people have been there since day one, that's been media that has uplifted this league from day one. There's a lot of times when you come in and have to get into the nitty gritty of things, or you come with more of a critical lens, a less complimentary lens, and you get dragged a little bit. Like sometimes it just becomes like you doing just your job becomes like you're creating a problem. And I think it's because there's a lack of understanding. And again, what a traditional media member's role is. Like I have the utmost respect for every player, coach, league executive that I come in contact with, because that's what it is. Like I respect you and I hope you respect me, but I'm not a fan of a single person in this league. I'm not a fan of a single team in this league. And so that not everything I do is going to be positive. Not everything I do is going to be in support. I'm going to write and report on what I know and what needs to be reported on. And I think sometimes that comes into question because there aren't enough reporters covering the league as a beat. Like every team deserves a beat reporter. Not every team has a beat reporter, and that's fucked up.
Yeah, it's wild.
Definitely.
I don't know if that made sense.
No, it totally.
That came out right, but yeah, it's just I think that gets lost a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Have you met LeBron James yet, or what?
No, I have.
Oh.
And like the number of times that I've told this story now, I really hope like I don't meet him until I'm like running a company and like am worthy of a conversation with him. Like
no, you are worthy, right?
We'll find you on the barbershop.
You are worthy.
I'm just saying, like one day I hope to meet him as like like the founder of a platform or media.
He's coming to you. He's coming.
Yeah,
to
like
you.
I'm shaking his hand. Like I'm.
Oh, what was your name again? Oh, okay, got it.
I just mean like when you think about people that inspire you or like were idols of yours at one point? Which again, now it's transitioned to like, I have the utmost respect for LeBron James, but when I'm in work mode, like I'm not
It doesn't
16.
matter.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not 16 and you're not the LeBron James that inspired my career. Like I'm here to get my job done.
Yep.
So, but I'm saying when you think about the people like your idols,
Yep.
for me, I've never wanted to meet my idols and be like, oh my God, I'm such a big fan. Like I wanted to sit down and pick their brain and like ask them what book you're reading right now. Like, you know, what time of the day do you wake up? Like, how do you start your day? Do you meditate? Like, I'd want to have a very, like friend to friend conversation. And to do that, I would have to be worthy of that. And I don't know.
Just one of your peers. Just one of your peers.
I'm still working on being worthy of that type of conversation with LeBron.
We all are.
Okay.
Last weekend, believe it or not, the Red Stars were in San Diego playing the Wave.
Yep.
And here in San Diego, the Wave have been around for 2 years, I believe, and they have absolutely taken off. Obviously, San Diego is not as big as a sports town with the amount of teams as Chicago, but Chicago does have their own, right? The Red Stars.
Yep.
They've been to the playoffs 6 consecutive seasons. But I'm not in the city. I feel like I don't see a lot of publicity. I don't see a lot of media coverage of them. Here in San Diego, the Wave are everywhere.
Yeah.
How can the Red Stars get to that kind of status that the Wave have here already in 2 years in San Diego?
So the Red Stars are all the way in Bridgeview, which, you know, is
where
not
the Fire used to play, right? They're at the old stadium way out there.
Yeah. And the Red Stars have one of the most loyal fan bases, fans that have been with that team since its inception. They're one of the original professional women's soccer organizations in America. So they've been around. And like before the NWSL was even organized, like the Red Stars were part of the original professional women's sports leagues that came before the NWSL. So anyways, these fans have been there forever, but in terms of like getting new fans, I don't think they're doing a good enough job, like reaching out or reaching a new fan base. And I think, again, a part of that is Bridgeview. Another part of it is the media. Like Chicago is such a saturated sports market that everybody's gotten into this A, B, C, D fall in line type of shit where it's like, oh, the Bears season is here and the Bulls season is here and the Blackhawks season is here. And like all these different media companies, like the Sun-Times included, they've been making these decisions to prioritize these beats, obviously because men's professional sports have been around longer than women's because men rule the fucking world or whatever. Like it's like, there's just so many reasons. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that media too has to do a better job of being like, okay, great. Like the Bears home opener is here, but we also need to prioritize getting someone out to, the Red Stars semifinal match. Like it's just the prioritization of women's sports and these beats is not there, and it needs to be, because think about it, like these are readers, viewers, subscribers who have been untapped for all this time. So if you become the outlet that is the source for everything Red Stars, everything Sky, like you're gonna have everybody beat. And that's something that I'm really focused on and intentional about. And I could 100% do a better job of covering the Red Stars. It's just a challenge because their season is at the same time as the WNBA. So it's essentially like trying to do 2 jobs, one person doing 2 jobs. So, I'm really proud of our sports department. Like I love our sports staff. I love writing for the Sun-Times and I love it because I know there's so much that we are going to continue to do and change. And I just feel really thankful that I work for an organization that I know is going to help me change the way that we cover women's sports in Chicago.
Love it. Get in there now while it's hot. Follow Annie Costabile Annie Costabile at Twitter. That is at Annie Costabile. That's Costabile, Annie Costabile. Go ahead and give her a follow. She covers the Chicago Sky, the Red Stars, and the Chicago Bulls for the Sun Times, and is also the host of her own podcast, the Equal Play Podcast. You could find that anywhere podcasts are found. Annie, thank you. Sorry for butchering your last name, but thank you so much for being here.
Oh my
Thanks
God,
so much,
this was so much fun. Thank you guys for having me. And wait, I do have to say, I didn't answer this question earlier about Candace Parker's future. I predict that she's going to be back in 2023 for a farewell tour of sorts. Maybe she's not going to say that at the beginning of the year, but that is my prediction. She is going to come back for one more season in the WNBA, and she's going to go for another title. Like, she's not coming back. If she comes back, she's not coming back just to get hugs and gifts and blah, 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 blah. Like, Candace is going to come back and try and go for another title. So if the Sky put together a team that can go for another title, that's going to impact her decision to come back. If the Sparks, but see, the thing with the Sparks now is they signed Kurt Miller, so I don't know if she's going to play for him. So again, my prediction is she's coming back. She's coming back to play for Chicago. James Wade has to put together a team worthy of
first.
Candace
Put
Parker.
all your money on the Sky this year. Put it all on the Sky, and he's got us covered. Annie, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Annie. All right, thanks again to our guest, Annie Costabile. That was really fun learning more about the Chicago Sky and all that they're facing this offseason. The Red Stars, the Bulls. She covers all of them for the Chicago Sun-Times, and she's also the host of the Equal Play podcast. Dan, our Chicago Bears, huge W on Monday.
Have a day.
I want to hear your thoughts on this. First, I'll give you mine. Justin Fields looked incredible. This looked like the guy that we drafted, that we were all hoping for him to be. I mean, these last few games, they've really been featuring his running, and that was something at the beginning of the year that I was harping on them not doing, and something that the previous regime didn't do at all with Justin Fields either. Just seeing that, the sky's the limit. I mean, he could be Jalen Hurts, could be Lamar Jackson. I mean, he looks incredible running the ball. He's had some great passes as well. The Bears win 33-14. What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, it was Chicago versus Boston. Bears beat Patriots, Bulls beat Celtics. Lamar Jackson, Hurts, even Daniel Jones out there in New York's running the ball all over the place. But really, I saw a team that took their mini bye because they had Thursday night into this Monday night. They took that, they reassessed, and they decided to make a game plan that catered to their players' skills. And instead of having their players fit into the coach's box of like, we're going to run this offense and you gotta be able to learn what we're going to run, they went, all right, what do you do well? What are your skill sets? I will tailor an offense to your skill sets. I'll design some quarterback runs right up the middle. I'll design some quick hits on the outside, and then allow you to use your feet, right? Play action rollouts, get you onto the edge. I couldn't, like, for the life of me, I don't remember watching a Bears game where it was third down and them getting it every single time. It felt like every time it was third down, even if Fields is under duress, under pressure, he's either sitting there hitting a wide open receiver on the outside or over the middle, or he's scrambling and picking up with his legs. It was just like the Bears couldn't be stopped. They were scoring like consecutive drive after consecutive drive. And I think it was one of the best nights as a Chicago sports fan. Monday night was, and I think we should all enjoy it and just celebrate kind of the victories we had.
The defense showed up too. I mean, we're talking about the offense a lot, but the defense, Bears defense has not let up more than, double-digit points in the second half of any game this year. So, that was the talking point we had a couple of weeks ago, I think, where we were saying the Bears really, in halftime are making those adjustments in a quick amount of time. They're figuring out what the, offense of the other team's been doing well in the first half. Look, they figured out Mac Jones really quick in this game and got him out of there. Bailey Zappi came in and he destroyed us on that first drive or two. And it was like, oh no. Right.
And then figured them out.
They come out of the half. By the end of the game, what are we saying? Bailey Zappi's not going to be the quarterback there. It's going to be Mac Jones again because the Bears figured him out. And credit to Eberflus, I think. And this whole staff has been incredible. Yeah. So Bears looked great. All right,
Love
that's
to see
going to
it.
take us over to our waiver wire Wednesday. You
Hit me with
mentioned
it.
Daniel Jones. He's my top QB pickup this week. Jimmy G was somebody that I mentioned last week too as a good streamer. He had a nice game. I think he's another good pickup too. It's rough at the quarterback position this year, honestly. There's maybe like 5 guys that I would feel comfortable starting every week. And another name that I mentioned last week was Deonta Foreman as a potential stash for our Christian McCaffrey injury. McCaffrey got traded,
Yeah.
like 2 days later. And so he is now in San Francisco. Foreman and Chuba Hubbard took on most of the work. They faced Tampa. They're not going to score any points. Boom,
Yeah.
both of them have solid games. So both of those guys are a pickup for me again. So I prefer Foreman if you're picking between those two. Gus Edwards is another name.
Gus
who
Bus.
came off of the pup IR and had a huge game. 2 touchdowns in his first return to action. Basically just took Kenyon Drake's job immediately. So if he's out there, he's a good pickup. Kyron Williams is a stash, I would say. Another, kind of low rostered person who Rams beat reporters are saying could have a big role when he returns. Cam Akers is on the way out. They're trying to trade him. He's not going to play another snap for the Rams. So Kyron Williams, I mean, he's pretty small. I think he's like 5'9". He runs 4.6. He's very small and slow. But the running back position is brutal. Darrell Henderson has not taken that job by any means. So he's worth a stash. If you need a wide receiver, George Pickens is still only 57% rostered. He's a stud. You got to grab him. Wan'Dale Robinson looks to be the number 1 for the Giants as well. Daniel Bellinger was their other big target hog, and he had a brutal face injury. I think he's going to be out for the rest of the season. So Wan'Dale Robinson could see a lot of targets. And then if you need a tight end, I like Irv Smith. He's probably out on the wire. He was on bye last week. So those are my pickups for this week, Dan.
Love it. Pick them
Now
up.
you got a
Win your
couple of
games.
Yeah. All right. That'll take us to our week 8 picks. We're going to start off with the Thursday game, Dan. Ravens at Buccaneers.
By the way, went 8-6 last week. Ravens at
Okay.
Bucks. Let's go Baltimore.
All right. Yeah. Bucks have been playing some brutal football. Broncos at Jaguars, both 2-5.
Jags.
Panthers at Falcons.
Falcons.
Bears at Cowboys.
Bears.
Dolphins at Lions.
Fins up.
Cardinals at Vikings.
Cardinals.
Oh, it's such a Cardinals guy. Vikings are 5-1, surprisingly.
About to be
Raiders at
5-2.
Saints.
Raiders. Josh Jacobs is so good.
Patriots at Jets.
Jets.
Steelers at Eagles.
Eagles. Fly. Eagles. Fly.
6-0. Titans at Texans.
Texans.
Ooh. Okay.
Upset. Need one.
Commanders at Colts.
Colts. Quarterback change.
49ers at Rams. It's always a good one. Low scoring.
49ers.
Giants at Seahawks.
Seahawks. Seattle's going to win.
Seahawks are looking good, man. 4-3.
Geno Smith, man. The truth.
Yeah. Packers at Bills.
Bills. And I love every minute of this Packers season so far.
Yeah, Packers 3-4. Brutal. Monday night, you got Bengals at Browns.
Bengals.
Joey Burrow, for
Yeah.
sure.
So good. Joe Shiesty.
Joe Shiesty. All right, that's going to be our show. Thanks again to Annie Costabile for joining us today. For Dan Sluck, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up.